Let us fight for a new world, a decent world that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people.
Welcome to Rabble Rants. I'm Santiago Helou Quintero, and alongside Jessa McLean, we're going to unpack the stories that have us most riled up and challenge the narratives around them.
Remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder, treason, and plot. I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.
I remember the 5th of November. For different reasons, though, than the 2024 one, I guess.
Well, there was like 150-odd Americans that didn't. Because I don't give a shit about anybody who voted for Kamala either, right? So, yeah, it happened. Trump is president again, in case, I don't know, you fucking missed it. But I didn't know how I would feel when it happened, because I think we knew it would happen.
Oh, yeah.
We can talk about why. I think that's what we are going to talk about. But I felt really fucking smug this morning going, it was kind of like, I don't want to go on there and say I told you so. But, you know, everyone told the Democrats so. Their base sure as fuck told them. People in Dearborn sure as fuck told them that this wasn't a winning policy, genocide. I mean, there's other reasons too, but the fact that I don't want Trump. I don't want Trump. I don't want Trump, okay? But I'm happy as fuck that the DNC were punished. No politician can stand behind a genocide, shout down their base who are trying to stop it, and think that they are going to win them over, either their vote or their labor. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, like, sorry that the kids that you tear-gassed aren't voting for you.
Yeah, or the people whose families you're bombing. I even saw Republicans, in the face of some Democrats, shouting them down, going, how can you justify sending all that money over to Israel? How can you justify that? Like, they are so fucked up voting Republican. I get it. But it was even, they couldn't even defend themselves to Republicans on some of these points. And I know, a big fuck you, honestly, to the people out there that are like, oh, I can't wait for them to see what happens under Trump to Gaza. What the fuck you mean? You mean you hope you see further destruction just so you can prove your point? Just so you can, get back at people who didn't get your girl into office? Like, you've got to be kidding me. Way to show your true colors.
One thing about, the cult of the Democratic Party that is always kind of funny to witness when they lose is that the blame game, right? Like, we've been seeing the blame game for years.
New Democrats do it well too.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. It's not unique.
Shout out to the NDP.
It's not unique at all to the Democratic Party, but it's really funny. Like, I keep seeing tweets of people who are like, I hope you third-party voters got what you fucking asked for. You fucking ruined my life, yada yada. Meanwhile, there wasn't a single state that would have been flipped by the third-party voters. Trump's victory was so absolute.
No one got what they wanted. Those third-party voters wanted an end to genocide and climate justice. What the fuck you mean they got what they wanted?
Yeah, but it's like, the third-party voters had nothing to do with it. Okay, and we can't blame Bernie this time, right? Bernie didn't even run.
But he would have won if he did. Though, he's not... I mean, he would have had to change his position, too. He's still standing there going, Israel has a right to defend itself, but...
Yeah, look, I'm more than mature enough at this point to not deify Bernie or anyone else anymore. Not that, I'm not grateful for the political awakening that his original campaign gave. But anyways, Bernie things aside, I'm not even going to go there. And now they're like, okay, well, we'll blame the Latinos, even though Latinos voted more for Kamala than Trump. Okay, well...
I know you told me they're blaming Latinos for what? It's because, 40% of them voted for Trump. Like, what numbers do you want? What is the threshold? Like, every fucking Latino?
Maybe if we allowed Latinos who weren't just rich Latinos to immigrate.
And vote.
Things would be different, right? Because, hey, we got some real right-wing Latinos. And those are the ones that have an easier time getting to these countries, just so you know. Don't get me wrong. We are smug. There is nothing to be happy about, though. it's an absolute victory on every level, right? Senate, House, everything. I mean, it's gonna be awful. I'm not, I have no false hope that like, well, it wasn't quite as bad as we thought last time around. So no, there's no false hope. It's gonna be way worse. Everyone knows it's gonna be way worse.
But how much way worse? What in 4 years did Biden do that could have mitigated? So what could another Kamala to mitigate like the anti-trans legislation and the anti-abortion legislation that just continues to roll through the states? You know, Biden had his chance, and it's so insulting for all these celebrities posting up selfies or anybody making these comments, these fucking feminists, usually white feminists. Oh, well, I voted today as though half the population's lives depended on it. I voted today for me and my 2 daughters. Like, there's women dying now because of these laws, being refused treatment by hospitals until they're in a situation so fucking dire that they die rather than get the healthcare that they need because of legislation that's been passed that Biden has not been able to thwart. 4 years ago, you know, this is the most important election of your time, women, and they gave you Biden. You fooled them. And so again, this mask slips. It slips. I would say it started with Obama, right? He had such promise and change, and then he ended up dropping the most drone strikes as any president, and built these migrant camps that everyone loved to dump on Trump for. And if you look materially, Trump didn't do anything all of that more horrible than the Democrats will do if given the opportunity to.
Yeah. No, and like that's the thing, right? Like, we have no false illusions that either side was going to act in the best interest of the people at any moment in time. I mean, at the end of the day, they're beholden to the rich.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, I'm not blaming you, but let's
young men, yeah.
Yeah,
no.
what the you know, I don't know if you can help make sense of it, but that's really troubling. And it does speak to what you were talking about in one of our other Rabble rants of not being able to harness the radicalization of, especially now we see young people, young men in specifically voting for Trump, and the dangers of not being able to thwart that. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, that is something that we have been raising the alarms about for a very long time, you know, like,
and it's partly why I shit on the NDP so much. I'll tell you why. Because other parties, they encourage the radicalization of the youth and other groups, right, in a most horrible way. But our parties, like you saw the way Kamala was trying to suppress any Palestinian solidarity, anybody trying to get her to answer on the Israel question, and in general, you know, you saw also the Democratic Party fight tooth and nail to remove socialists from the ballot. And our new Democrats are the same, right? They do everything in their power to push down the radical elements of the left. They keep us down. They try to moderate us. And other parties, we actually shit on them for doing that because we know it's not in our best interest. We know it's not in the people's best interest. But you have to admire that tactic. That is how you point people's anger in the right direction and not just put it into bureaucracy and the correct avenues and respectability politics. That's not what people are asking for. And because we have not given it to them, we have lost the youth to the right. And the fight that we have in front of us is becoming even more daunting day by day.
A youth that back in 2016, for example, had all the promise of being one of the most progressive youths. But back in that day, there was it was extremely anti-right wing, extremely progressive. We have the speed at which we have lost the youth. It's horrifying. And there's no I mean, people are already living through extremely tough times. There's no waiting for something to change their mind. It's already been lost. Yet, I mean, we know that the Democrats aren't going to learn any lessons from this. You know, they're not going to be like, oh, well, maybe we should have had an actual primary. Maybe we should have, allowed people to see, if anything, their reaction is going to be, well, we can't run any women anymore. That might be the one lesson they learned from it.
You know, you're going to see them blaming the demographics like you talk about. But yeah, no inner reflection, not on policy. I mean, the fact that they were walking around with the Cheneys.
I mean, they didn't even have policy.
No, it lacked policy. Nothing about healthcare, which everyone is struggling.
I mean, Kamala didn't even have a platform for how long? Like literally no platform, right?
Which is strange coming from someone who's been so intertwined in policy and how that role would be for so long to not have concrete ideas. Like, that's such a red flag when they don't provide that. But Olivia Chow didn't provide one either. And so it was another leftist, not even a faux progressive, that's trying to win the free labor and votes of the very people they plan to oppress anyway. And it's almost like we're in another one of those situations, where they ran Hillary when we knew Bernie would win, and they put up another unpopular candidate like Kamala,
who got destroyed when they were actually in a primary. Like, it was brutal how bad their primary was back in 2020, right? Like, that was embarrassing. Yeah, they seem like the person to run. They're not going to learn anything from this. And I'm not waiting for them to learn it. Like, and they don't have their usual arguments. Like I said, they can't go and blame third-party voters because the margin was so big. They can't be like, oh, well, we won the popular vote. No, you lost the popular vote this time around.
There's so many reasons to disappoint their base, but like, how are you activating people? How are you getting people convinced that, putting another Democrat in there for 4 years was going to give them anything but what they'd experienced for the last 4 years? And they couldn't. And that was a tough place to be. You'd have to be criticizing your own work for the last 4 years. So it was just like this safe coasting of an election. But it's like, in the end, you realize the people behind these parties, they don't give a shit who wins in the end. It doesn't fucking matter to them.
No. And let's talk Canada for a second. We're not learning any lessons here, right? I mean, we know the Democrats aren't. But hey, Poilievre's waiting. He's coming. It's gonna happen here too.
Oh, he's watching this and he's probably so excited. And this is for all the people there that are, Americans. How can they do this? And the memes were endless. Here's the Americans about to make another stupid mistake, and it's like, buckle up, people. Not that it's the same thing. It's the same thing. No, but I would feel the same way about someone voting for Justin Trudeau under what has happened that I would for Poilievre. I don't know how you could go and take that time to walk to the school and line up and present your ID and tell that person that they deserve to keep doing that job. Nor do I understand how you would hand it over to some right-wing fuckface that wants to scapegoat the most marginalized people in our community so brazenly. Because the Liberals are doing it anyway.
Yeah.
They have all of the detriments that the Conservatives have, except they couch it in this bleeding heart liberal rhetoric. But that's harder and harder to buy. There's no Liberal that doesn't know what the fuck they've done for the last 400 days. And so if you're still giving that your stamp of approval, I put you in the same category. I mean, I don't even want to talk about the NDP because I just go on so long about them. But in terms of those two parties, that's how I feel. And it's the same with the Democrats. If you went out and voted for Kamala and tried to pretend to people that would somehow make a huge difference in their lives, even in women's lives, fuck right off. Which women? Which women? Rich white women? Maybe? Materially, she hates workers just as fucking much. So, no. Winning the presidency isn't going to overturn those abortion laws. It meant nothing for women's rights.
No.
Nothing.
No.
So, the good news is, though, let's end up. I do have good news. I have very good news. Because you all can be as smug as me today. Because you know why? Because the plan has not changed. Not in any way. Nothing we have talked about ever on our show, either Blueprints of Disruption or here on Rabble Rants. There is no call to action. There is no tactic that we have discussed that still isn't in play at this time, right? The levers of power still remain the same. The systems that oppress us are still there. They just have a different character running the show. But behind the scenes, we have the same enemies still. So yeah, there's probably people just despondent today. They don't understand what is happening, very disappointed, troubled maybe with some of the demographics voting, and what that means for our future. But we all knew that that was already a hurdle for us. We saw those numbers here for Conservative support in Canada. The work is still to be done. Today did not, I think, mark any of that, except perhaps that we know voters will hold genocidal politicians, unapologetically genocidal politicians, accountable for their actions. Thanks for letting us rant. If you liked it, share it. If you want to know more, check out the show notes. Whatever you do, keep on disrupting.